The most dangerous verdict is the one made before a single fact is verified. Imagine pulling into work on an ordinary Tuesday morning, believing the biggest challenge ahead is the case waiting inside your courtroom, only to discover that someone has already decided who you are before you have spoken a single word. The first light of autumn settled across the polished glass walls of the Federal Courthouse in Richmond, Virginia, casting long golden reflections over rows of government vehicles and neatly trimmed maple trees whose leaves had just begun turning shades of crimson and amber. Lawyers hurried toward the entrance carrying leather briefcases, deputy marshals exchanged quiet greetings with courthouse security, and reporters prepared cameras for a hearing expected to draw statewide attention. It looked like every other workday until a black Mercedes-Benz S-Class rolled smoothly into a parking space near the courthouse entrance. The luxury sedan came to a gentle stop, and a black woman in her early 50s stepped out with calm confidence. She wore a tailored charcoal gray business suit, simple pearl earrings, polished black heels, and carried a slim leather folder beneath one arm. Nothing about her appearance was flashy. Everything about it reflected quiet professionalism. She closed the driver's door with deliberate care, glanced briefly at the courthouse clock, and smiled softly to herself. She was early, exactly as she had been for nearly every important day throughout her career. Before she could take more than a few steps toward the entrance, the sharp voice of a police officer interrupted the peaceful morning. "Ma'am, stay where you are." Conversations nearby slowed almost instantly. The woman turned without the slightest trace of panic and saw Officer Ethan Brooks walking toward her with measured confidence. His Navy patrol uniform was perfectly pressed, his badge caught the morning sunlight, and his expression suggested he had already reached a conclusion. His eyes moved from the expensive Mercedes to the woman standing beside it before settling into unmistakable skepticism. "Is this your vehicle?" he asked. The woman answered in an even, respectful voice. "Yes, officer. It is registered in my name." Ethan looked at the luxury sedan once more before returning his attention to her. "I am going to need you to prove that." She gave a small nod. "Of course. My registration is inside the vehicle." As she slowly turned toward the driver's door, Ethan immediately raised his hand. "Please stop. Keep your hands where I can see them." She complied without hesitation. Several courthouse employees approaching the entrance exchanged uncertain glances, sensing the growing tension. A television cameraman quietly redirected his lens toward the encounter while two law students stopped walking altogether. The woman remained remarkably composed. "Officer," she said gently, "you are welcome to verify the license plate through dispatch." Ethan folded his arms. "We will get to that." His tone carried the certainty of someone who believed experience mattered more than explanation. The woman neither argued nor protested. She simply stood quietly beside the Mercedes while the morning breeze carried a few autumn leaves across the courthouse plaza. Somewhere inside the building, clerks organized files for an important federal hearing that could not begin without one particular person. Outside, no one watching realized they were witnessing the first moments of a misunderstanding that would soon challenge assumptions, test professional judgment, and remind everyone standing there that the truth rarely announces itself before it arrives. Officer Ethan Brooks took one slow step closer, leaving only a few feet between himself and the woman standing beside the black Mercedes. The courthouse plaza, which had been filled with the ordinary rhythm of another workday, now carried the unmistakable silence that always follows an unexpected confrontation. Attorneys slowed their pace without appearing obvious. Administrative employees glanced over their shoulders before continuing toward the entrance. Even the television crew that had arrived to cover the morning hearing quietly shifted their attention toward the growing scene. Monica Hayes remained composed, her hands relaxed at her sides, her expression steady. She had spent decades inside courtrooms where emotions often clouded judgment, and she understood that raising her voice rarely changed another person's mind. Ethan studied her driver's side door before looking back at her. "If the vehicle belongs to you, why did you hesitate before reaching for the registration?" His question carried less curiosity than suspicion. Monica answered without changing her calm tone. "Because you instructed me to stop moving, officer. I am following your directions." Her response was respectful, neither defensive nor confrontational. For a brief moment, Ethan seemed uncertain how to respond. but only for a second. He reached for the small radio attached to his shoulder and quietly spoke with dispatch while never taking his eyes off Monica. Nearby, two young law clerks exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered that the woman had done nothing unusual. The other simply shrugged, unwilling to interfere with a police investigation. The courthouse security officers near the entrance noticed the interaction but remained at their assigned positions, assuming it was a routine traffic matter. Monica looked toward the courthouse clock again. The minute hand continued its steady movement. Time mattered. Inside the building, dozens of people were preparing for a federal hearing scheduled to begin promptly that morning, although no one outside knew exactly who was expected to preside over it. Ethan lowered his radio. Dispatch is still checking. Monica nodded politely. Then I am happy to wait while they verify the registration. Her willingness to cooperate did not seem to reduce his concern. Instead, Ethan glanced once more at the luxury sedan. Vehicles like this attract attention, he said. Sometimes things are not what they appear. Monica met his eyes without anger. That statement is true in more ways than one. The answer lingered between them, subtle enough that most people nearby missed its meaning entirely. A light breeze swept across the plaza, scattering dry autumn leaves across the polished sidewalk. The courthouse flags waved gently overhead. More employees entered the building, though several quietly looked back at the unusual encounter before disappearing through the security checkpoint. Ethan appeared convinced that caution justified every decision he was making. Monica appeared equally convinced that facts would eventually speak louder than assumptions. Neither person raised a voice. Neither attempted to embarrass the other. Yet the distance between them seemed larger with every passing second. Then Ethan made a decision that caused several nearby witnesses to stop walking altogether. He informed Monica that, until the vehicle ownership could be fully verified and the situation clarified, she would be temporarily detained according to department procedure. Monica slowly extended her hands without resistance, maintaining the same quiet dignity she had shown since the first moment he approached. As the plaza fell completely silent, no one standing there realized that inside the courthouse, concern was beginning to spread because the federal judge assigned to open one of the most important hearings of the month had still not arrived in her courtroom. The cool morning air seemed to stand still as Monica Hayes quietly complied with Officer Ethan Brooks's instructions. She neither protested nor questioned his authority. With measured composure, she placed her leather folder on the hood of her Mercedes and gently extended her hands exactly as requested. Several people nearby exchanged uncertain looks, expecting an argument that never came. Instead, they witnessed something far more unsettling. The woman at the center of the attention carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who believed that truth required no performance. Ethan carefully completed the temporary detention according to procedure while continuing to watch her expression for any sign of resistance. He found none. Monica simply looked toward the courthouse entrance for a brief moment before returning her attention to him. "Officer," she said softly, "when dispatch finishes verifying the registration, this misunderstanding will become much easier to resolve." Ethan nodded without revealing any emotion. "Until then, I have to work with the information I have." Monica answered with a faint smile that was almost impossible to interpret. "That is true. We all do." The words lingered quietly between them. A pair of assistant United States attorneys approaching the entrance slowed their pace as they noticed the unusual scene unfolding only a short distance away. One of them frowned, trying to recognize the woman from where he stood, but the angle and the growing crowd prevented a clear view. Rather than interrupt a police investigation, both attorneys continued inside the courthouse, assuming someone else would sort everything out. Across the plaza, the television crew had completely abandoned preparations for the scheduled hearing. The cameraman lowered his equipment, uncertain whether recording such an encounter would be appropriate, while the reporter quietly observed from a respectful distance. Nearby, courthouse employees whispered among themselves, each person forming conclusions based on only a few seconds of observation. Some believed the officer must have good reason. Others wondered why the woman remained so remarkably calm. Very few considered that neither assumption was supported by verified facts. Inside the courthouse, however, an entirely different story was beginning to unfold. In courtroom 3, law clerks finished arranging binders at the bench while the courtroom deputy checked the official schedule for the third time that morning. The hearing was expected to begin in less than 10 minutes. Yet one important detail refused to make sense. Judge Monica Hayes had never arrived late, not once in nearly 12 years on the federal bench. The courtroom deputy looked toward the empty hallway before reaching for the office telephone. The judge's chambers did not answer. Her judicial assistant checked every room on the floor. Nothing. A second call went to courthouse security, asking whether Judge Hayes had already entered through another entrance. Security officers reviewed the access log, but found no indication that she had passed through screening. Quiet concerns slowly replaced routine confidence. Meanwhile, only a few hundred feet away, Monica continued standing beside her own vehicle with quiet dignity, watching the courthouse where dozens of people had unknowingly begun searching for the very person standing in plain sight. Ethan remained convinced he was preventing a possible violation of the law. Monica remained equally convinced that patience would reveal what assumptions never could. Neither of them realized that the next phone call placed inside the courthouse would begin setting into motion a chain of events that no one gathered on the plaza could possibly anticipate. Inside the federal courthouse, the atmosphere shifted almost unnoticed at first. Courtroom deputies glanced at the clock again, expecting the familiar sound of footsteps that always announced Judge Monica Hayes arriving a few minutes before every scheduled hearing. Instead, the hallway remained unusually quiet. The courtroom deputy checked the calendar once more, then looked toward the judge's chambers where the lights were on, but the office remained empty. Her judicial assistant had already searched every conference room on the floor and quietly returned with the same answer. No one had seen Judge Hayes since early that morning. A second clerk attempted to call her cellular telephone. The call rang several times before going unanswered. No one found that alarming by itself. Judges often silenced their phones before entering the courthouse. What troubled everyone was that Monica Hayes had built a reputation over 3 decades for remarkable punctuality. She believed that asking others to respect the court's time required first respecting it herself. Every attorney practicing in the district knew that if a hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock, Judge Hayes would already be reviewing the case file several minutes beforehand. The courtroom deputy finally contacted courthouse security. "Can you verify whether Judge Hayes entered through another security checkpoint this morning?" The officer on duty immediately reviewed the electronic access records. A few seconds later, he answered with growing uncertainty. "There is no badge entry under Judge Hayes today." The response spread quietly through the administrative offices. No panic followed, only professional concern. The chief deputy clerk asked another employee to check the judge's parking area. A facilities supervisor walked outside through a side entrance, expecting to find the familiar black Mercedes already parked in its reserved space. Instead, the designated parking space remained empty. He frowned and immediately reported the unexpected detail back inside. Meanwhile, only a short distance away, Monica continued standing patiently beside her Mercedes while Officer Ethan Brooks remained convinced that additional verification was necessary before allowing her to leave. Neither person raised their voice. Ethan periodically checked his radio for updates, while Monica calmly watched courthouse employees continue entering the building. Several witnesses remained nearby, speaking in hushed voices. Some quietly praised the officer for being cautious. Others questioned whether the situation seemed to be lasting longer than necessary. Monica offered no commentary. She simply waited. Across the plaza, a younger patrol officer named Daniel Morris arrived after hearing Ethan request routine assistance. Daniel observed the scene for only a few moments before his attention settled on Monica's composed expression. He noticed something that others had overlooked. There was no frustration in her face, no attempt to persuade the gathering crowd, and no interest in arguing her position. Instead, she seemed almost concerned about something entirely unrelated to herself. Daniel followed her line of sight toward the courthouse entrance before asking Ethan in a quiet voice, "Has dispatch confirmed the registration yet?" Ethan shook his head, still waiting. Daniel nodded but remained thoughtful. Inside the courthouse, the search continued, growing more organized. The clerk of court made a direct call to the United States Marshals Service Judicial Security Office, explaining that Judge Monica Hayes had not appeared for an important federal proceeding and could not be located anywhere inside the building. The deputy marshal listening on the other end asked one simple question before ending the call. "Has anyone checked outside?" Within moments, two deputy marshals left the security office and headed toward the courthouse plaza, unaware that the person they had been asked to locate had never been missing at all. The courthouse plaza remained wrapped in an uneasy silence as the morning continued slipping away minute by minute. Officer Ethan Brooks glanced once again toward his patrol vehicle, expecting dispatch to deliver the confirmation that would settle the situation. Instead, the radio remained quiet. Monica Hayes stood with the same composed patience she had shown from the beginning, her attention drifting briefly toward the courthouse entrance before returning to the officer in front of her. She understood something that no one else gathered there could possibly know. Every passing minute was delaying far more than her own schedule. Inside the courthouse, attorneys representing both sides of a high-profile federal civil rights case had already taken their seats. Legal assistants arranged exhibits. Witnesses reviewed their statements. Members of the public quietly filled the gallery, wondering why the courtroom remained closed. The courtroom deputy made another announcement asking everyone for a few more minutes of patience while administrative staff worked to resolve an unexpected delay. Confusion slowly spread through the spectators. Judge Monica Hayes had earned a reputation for beginning every hearing exactly on time. Experienced attorneys exchanged puzzled looks because none of them could remember another occasion when she had failed to appear. Back in the administrative offices, concern had become coordinated action. The clerk of court briefed the chief judge's staff while courthouse security continued checking entrances, elevators, parking areas, and surveillance cameras. No one imagined that the person they were searching for was standing only a short walk away from the front doors. The request sent to the United States Marshals Service Judicial Security Office quickly reached two deputy marshals responsible for protecting the federal judiciary. Without unnecessary alarm, they stepped outside together and began scanning the courthouse grounds with trained attention. Neither expected what they were about to find. Meanwhile, Daniel Morris remained beside Ethan, observing both the officer and the woman in silence. Something about the encounter continued to trouble him. Monica had answered every question respectfully. She had followed every instruction immediately. She had never attempted to leave. She had even suggested verifying the registration through official channels instead of arguing. Daniel quietly leaned toward Ethan. "She has been cooperative this entire time." Ethan nodded. "I know. We still need verification before ending the detention." Daniel accepted the answer but continued watching Monica. Experience had taught him that cooperation often revealed as much about a person as any identification document. A few feet away, one of the television reporters quietly asked a courthouse employee whether anyone knew who the woman was. The employee shook his head and admitted that he had never seen her before, although something about her face seemed strangely familiar. Another attorney exiting the courthouse briefly looked toward the gathering crowd, paused as if trying to remember where he had seen Monica, then hurried back inside after receiving an urgent telephone call. The atmosphere continued changing almost imperceptibly. It was no longer simple curiosity. It had become expectation, as though everyone sensed that an important piece of information had not yet reached the plaza. Then, from the courthouse entrance, two deputy United States Marshals emerged with calm but purposeful strides. Their eyes moved carefully across the small gathering before stopping almost instantly on the woman standing beside the black Mercedes. They exchanged a quick glance with one another, their expressions shifting from routine concern to unmistakable recognition. Daniel noticed the change immediately. Ethan, still focused on procedure, had not yet realized that the people now walking toward them were about to transform an ordinary traffic investigation into a moment that every witness present would remember for years. The two deputy United States Marshals crossed the courthouse plaza with calm, deliberate steps, drawing little attention at first from the small crowd gathered nearby. They had responded expecting to locate a federal judge who had somehow failed to arrive for one of the district's most significant hearings of the month. Instead, they found themselves looking directly at the woman they had been searching for. Monica Hayes stood exactly where they had been told no judge could possibly be. Her posture remained composed, her expression peaceful, and her attention rested quietly on Officer Ethan Brooks, who was still waiting for dispatch to complete its verification. Daniel Morris noticed the marshals immediately. Something about the way they carried themselves suggested this was no ordinary inquiry. Ethan turned only after hearing measured footsteps approach from behind. One of the deputy marshals spoke first in a respectful voice that carried clearly across the suddenly silent plaza. "Good morning, Your Honor." Time seemed to pause. Every conversation stopped. Several attorneys standing near the courthouse entrance slowly turned toward Monica. The television reporter lowered her notebook without realizing she had done so. Daniel looked from Monica to the marshals, then back to Ethan, whose expression shifted from confidence to confusion in a single heartbeat. Monica offered the deputy marshal a polite smile and inclined her head slightly. "Good morning, Deputy Collins. I apologize for the delay. It appears there has been a misunderstanding." The deputy marshal's eyes briefly moved toward the temporary restraints before returning to Ethan. There was no anger in his face, only professional concern. "Officer," he said evenly, "this is the Honorable Monica Hayes of the United States District Court. We have been searching the courthouse for the past several minutes because today's proceedings cannot begin without her." Ethan stared at Monica, searching her face for some indication that this was impossible, yet every person standing nearby now seemed to recognize her at once. The assistant United States attorney who had passed by earlier quietly removed his glasses and whispered to a colleague, "That is Judge Hayes." Another attorney nodded slowly, his expression turning from uncertainty to disbelief. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He had sensed since arriving that something did not fit the picture, but even he had never imagined this. Ethan looked toward his shoulder radio as though expecting it to correct what he had just heard. At that exact moment, dispatch finally answered. "Unit 12, vehicle registration has been verified. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class is registered to Monica Elaine Hayes. Registration valid. No outstanding issues." The words echoed through the speaker with almost unbearable timing. Ethan remained motionless for several seconds. Every assumption that had guided his decisions that morning dissolved beneath a few carefully verified facts. Monica never displayed satisfaction. She never attempted to embarrass him in front of the growing crowd. Instead, she looked at him with the same calm expression she had maintained from the beginning. "Officer Brooks," she said gently, "I appreciate that public safety requires careful attention. It also requires complete information before conclusions are reached." Her voice carried neither accusation nor triumph. It carried experience. Deputy Collins respectfully assisted in bringing the encounter to an orderly close while confirming that the court was waiting for Judge Hayes. Around them, the plaza slowly came back to life, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The luxury sedan was still the same. The courthouse was still the same. The woman standing beside the vehicle had not changed at all. Only the assumptions surrounding her had. And in that quiet moment, every witness present learned how quickly certainty can disappear when truth finally arrives. For several long seconds, no one on the courthouse plaza seemed willing to speak. The morning traffic continued beyond the government buildings, leaves drifted across the sidewalk, and somewhere in the distance a church bell marked the passing hour. Yet inside the small circle surrounding Monica Hayes and Officer Ethan Brooks, the silence carried far more weight than any conversation could have. Ethan lowered his eyes for the first time since approaching the Mercedes. Everything he had believed only moments earlier had unraveled with a single verified identity. He looked at Monica, then at Deputy Collins, before quietly saying, "Your Honor, I did not know." Monica met his gaze with the same steady composure she had carried from the beginning. "No, Officer Brooks," she replied gently. "You did not." There was no satisfaction in her voice. There was no anger either, only quiet certainty. Deputy Collins confirmed that the courthouse was waiting for Judge Hayes and that the hearing schedule had already been adjusted while staff searched for her. Ethan immediately acknowledged the information and respectfully concluded the detention. Daniel Morris remained nearby, watching every detail unfold. He realized that the moment would stay with him for the rest of his career, not because a federal judge had been involved, but because a simple verification completed only minutes later had completely changed the meaning of everything that had happened. Monica retrieved her leather folder from the hood of her Mercedes and carefully smoothed the sleeve of her charcoal gray jacket. Her movements were unhurried, almost routine, as though she refused to let frustration dictate her actions. Several attorneys who had gathered near the entrance respectfully stepped aside to clear a path. One quietly greeted her. Another simply nodded. The television reporter chose not to ask a single question, recognizing that some moments deserved reflection more than immediate headlines. Ethan finally found the words he had been searching for. "Your Honor, I sincerely apologize for this situation." Monica paused before answering. "Officer Brooks, every public servant carries responsibility. Mine begins inside a courtroom. Yours begins outside one. Both require judgment before conclusions." Ethan listened without interruption. She continued in the same calm voice. "Authority is never tested when everything appears obvious. Authority is tested when assumptions become easier than facts." Daniel lowered his head slightly, allowing those words to settle in his mind. They sounded less like criticism and more like a lesson earned through decades of experience. Monica looked briefly toward the courthouse doors where dozens of people were still waiting for the day's proceedings to begin. "The law asks every citizen to follow the same principle," she said. "Verify first. Decide second." No one answered because nothing needed to be added. The message spoke for itself. Deputy Collins politely informed Judge Hayes that the courtroom was ready whenever she arrived. Monica thanked him with a small smile before turning once more toward Ethan. "I hope today becomes an opportunity rather than simply an embarrassment. Every difficult day gives us the chance to become better tomorrow." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand, Your Honor." Whether he fully understood in that moment was impossible to know, but everyone standing nearby recognized genuine humility replacing earlier certainty. As Monica began walking toward the courthouse entrance, conversations quietly resumed across the plaza. People who had witnessed the encounter no longer spoke about a luxury automobile or a routine police stop. Instead, they spoke about patience, dignity, and the remarkable restraint of a woman who had possessed every reason to demand respect, yet had chosen to let the truth speak long before she ever mentioned her title. Judge Monica Hayes entered the federal courthouse with the same quiet confidence she had displayed every morning for years. Employees, attorneys, and deputy marshals respectfully stepped aside as she walked toward the courtroom, not because of what had happened outside, but because they recognized the discipline that allowed her to leave the incident behind without allowing it to influence the work waiting ahead. Within minutes, she took her seat on the federal bench, reviewed the case file before her, and began the hearing with the same professionalism expected of every judge entrusted with administering justice. No reference was made to the events outside the courthouse. Every attorney received equal time. Every argument was heard carefully. Every ruling was based solely upon the law and the evidence presented. Those sitting in the gallery would never have guessed that only a short time earlier the judge presiding over the courtroom had been delayed by a misunderstanding just outside the building. While the hearing proceeded, another process quietly began elsewhere. Following standard department policy, Officer Ethan Brooks prepared a complete incident report describing every decision he had made that morning. His body-worn camera footage, dispatch communications, and radio recordings were submitted for supervisory review. The purpose was not to assign blame before the facts were examined, but to determine whether department procedures had been properly followed and whether improvements could be made through training or policy. Daniel Morris also completed a witness statement, carefully documenting the sequence of events exactly as he had observed them without adding assumptions or personal opinions. Supervisors emphasized that the review would focus on verified evidence rather than public speculation. By late afternoon, the department's professional standards unit had already begun reviewing the available information, including the timing of the registration verification, the communications between dispatch and responding officers, and the decisions made throughout the encounter. Outside the courthouse, several witnesses quietly discussed what they had seen. Some admitted they had accepted the officer's initial assumption without questioning it. Others reflected on how easily appearances could influence judgment, even among educated professionals. The television reporter who had witnessed the encounter chose a different approach from the sensational headlines often expected in modern media. Rather than focusing on embarrassment or conflict, her report highlighted the importance of verification before reaching conclusions and the remarkable composure demonstrated throughout the encounter. By the end of the day, many viewers remembered not the luxury automobile or the misunderstanding, but Judge Hayes' calm reminder that facts deserve to arrive before opinions. Inside her chambers, Monica finished reviewing the final documents from the morning hearing before gathering her notes to leave for the evening. She understood that the review taking place outside the courthouse would follow its own course under established procedures. She had no interest in influencing it. Accountability carried meaning only when every person received the same fairness she expected inside her courtroom. Across town, Ethan sat alone for several minutes after completing his report. The events replayed repeatedly in his mind, not because someone had corrected him publicly, but because he recognized how confidence without complete information could quietly become unfairness. He remembered Monica's words with surprising clarity. Verify first. Decide second. They no longer sounded like advice offered by a judge. They sounded like a principle capable of changing every interaction that would follow throughout his career. Sometimes the most important lessons are not delivered through punishment. Sometimes they arrive through dignity, patience, and the quiet power of someone who refuses to abandon fairness even after fairness was first denied to them. Several months passed before the events of that autumn morning quietly found their place in memory, but they were never completely forgotten. The federal courthouse continued operating with the same steady rhythm that defined the American justice system. Hearings began on time. Attorneys argued their cases. Citizens entered the courtroom hoping their voices would be heard fairly. Judge Monica Hayes remained exactly as she had always been, approaching every decision with patience, careful preparation, and an unwavering commitment to the principle that every person deserved to be judged by evidence rather than appearance. Her colleagues noticed no change in her demeanor because there was none. She had never viewed the incident outside the courthouse as a personal victory or someone else's defeat. To her, it had simply become another reminder that justice demanded constant discipline from everyone entrusted with public responsibility. The department's administrative review eventually concluded according to established procedures. Supervisors examined body-worn camera recordings, dispatch communications, witness statements, and department policy in detail. The review identified opportunities for additional training emphasizing verification, communication, and impartial decision-making before reaching conclusions during public encounters. Those recommendations became part of future training sessions attended by officers throughout the department. Rather than allowing one difficult morning to define an entire career, the process focused on improving judgment so similar misunderstandings would become less likely in the future. Officer Ethan Brooks accepted every recommendation without argument. He understood that professional growth often begins with the willingness to examine one's own decisions honestly. Months later, he attended a community outreach program hosted jointly by the courthouse, local law enforcement leaders, and neighborhood organizations. The discussion centered on trust, accountability, and the relationship between public servants and the communities they served. As Ethan entered the auditorium, he noticed Judge Hayes speaking with several law students who had gathered after the event. She greeted each student with the same warmth and attention she offered everyone else. When their conversation ended, Ethan quietly approached her. "Your Honor," he said respectfully, "I wanted to thank you again for how you handled that day." Monica smiled gently. "Officer Brooks, the important question has never been what happened that morning. The important question is what happens afterward." Ethan nodded. "I think about your words almost every day." Monica folded her notes before answering. Good judgment is not measured by how often we are confident. It is measured by how willing we are to pause until confidence is supported by facts. Daniel Morris, now assigned to community engagement initiatives, happened to overhear the conversation. He smiled quietly, realizing that the lesson learned outside the courthouse had reached far beyond the people who had witnessed it firsthand. It had influenced training, conversations, and the daily choices of professionals committed to serving others. As the evening sun settled across the courthouse steps, Monica looked toward the familiar plaza where everything had begun months earlier. People crossed the sidewalk without noticing the place where assumptions had once overshadowed truth. That seemed fitting. Buildings remember nothing. People do. And the strongest institutions are not built because mistakes never happen. They endure because honest people are willing to learn from them. As Monica walked toward her waiting Mercedes, the courthouse behind her stood as it always had, a symbol that justice belongs not to those with the loudest voices or the highest titles, but to those patient enough to seek the truth before rendering judgment. Because in the end, authority may command attention, but only fairness earns lasting respect, And every lasting act of justice begins with one simple choice. Verify first, decide second.